Sage Wanderer here, coming at you from my van down by the river. So I apologize for the ghostly image on the screen. I dropped my phone, and now I have a problem with the camera. So I will be getting a new phone as soon as I can muster it. So, what I'm talking about today is Alex Jones. I think Alex Jones has gone rogue. Dun, dun, dun. Since Alex Jones's removal from the webosphere, and since he has now limited to his own website and radio, I think he feels like the leash has been removed and he's gone off the deep end, I'm afraid. Well, here's why I think that. I think that he's bought into this Q conspiracy that there is going to be military tribunals and that Donald Trump intends to suspend the Constitution so that he can more easily go after his enemies within the deep state. First of all, I don't believe that's true. I just don't believe that's true. Because there's a reason why no one's ever done that. There's a reason why that's not been done in the United States. Nobody's ever suspended the Constitution to go after criminals within the government. That's never happened. Correct me if I'm wrong, that's never happened. The Constitution applies to all Americans. But honestly, the Constitution really applies to all human beings because it's a natural law. The Constitution just really enumerates the rights that are all human beings' rights by nature. Now, whether you believe that God endowed you with those inalienable rights that cannot be taken away from you, or whether you believe, and I believe both things, that we as animals, as the primary apex predator on this planet, we have the right to conduct ourselves with certain dignities that we have earned through the evolutionary chain. So if you believe in evolution or God, it doesn't matter. It's a natural law, is what I've always tried to say on this channel. And, you know, what's more natural than God? So it's something that a government does not have the power to suspend or take away. So I do not believe that anyone will do this because people like me would not take well with it. And I personally will not comply. Just see my video, or my song rather, well, it's on video. I'm not going to the FEMA camp. Or how about this other one that I did called "You Can Have My Guns Over Your Dead Body." I'm not going to be told what to do by some 20-year-old with an AR-15. I'm too old for that crap. And there's a lot of other people out there just like me. So there's a reason why nobody's ever attempted this, because it would simply be a declaration of war against the people. Occasionally, Americans have agreed to certain fudges on the Constitution when we were in times of significant peril, as in after we were attacked on 9/11 and after we were attacked at Pearl Harbor. And that if they want to take away our rights, that's been the proven plan and the method that they use. They use some kind of Pearl Harbor. There's no Pearl Harbor here. A few Veritas videos of some undercover commies and, you know, some nefarious, corruptible behavior by unelected officials is not enough to declare martial law and suspend our Constitution. And no sane individual would think so. So this conspiracy theory they're selling is pure fear-mongering. I don't believe it's within the realm of possibility. Anyone who says so is fanciful, if you ask me. And that's coming from a guy who makes his bones around here, talking about giants and old redwood trees as big as the sky, and aliens and Bigfoot. So if I'm telling you that this is beyond the realm of flexible, cohesive reason, then you ought to trust me on it. But go check it out for yourself. Now, Jones and Mike Adams are citing, I think, 3 executive orders. And the language in these executive orders that makes them think that this is, that they're saying we're already under martial law. We're already under, well, a state of emergency and martial law are not the same thing. And you got to understand the subtleties of language. You'd think it's the same thing, But unless you're one of these people who study contracts and loopholes and lawyers, you wouldn't understand that those are very different things. State of emergency, that language means it frees up when a president declares a state of emergency, for instance, like a hurricane. It allows them to utilize federal funds and move money around, move resources around without going through the normal hoops and loops that they have to usually jump through to get permission, to get funding. So it's kind of like writing a blank check. A state of emergency says we're going to do everything within our power under the Constitution, right, to make this happen. And this is what Americans have always done. The National Guard would come in and they would actually help people. But some things have changed recently. In Katrina, the National Guard thought they had the right to take away guns, and they did. And I believe that's quietly been dealt with in court, and I don't think they're going to make that mistake again. There were rumors that was happening in Puerto Rico, which is not a state, which is a territory, which may make it slightly different. The bottom line is, in Oregon, there's an unconstitutional law that I think has yet to be challenged, where they can just say you're a threat and come and take your guns away. Unconstitutional. So I don't believe that this is going to happen. I think that our laws are going to protect us. I don't think any sane person would declare martial law. A state of emergency is not martial law. Let's just make that clear. It doesn't give you the right to suspend the Constitution. So if we're in a state of war, let's say there's any enemy combatants on the ground and they are firing on us. Okay, so that would be a circumstance where martial law would be declared, curfews enacted, that sort of thing. That sometimes happens in extended riots on a localized area. Just because LA's on fire doesn't mean you have to stay in your home in Michigan. So, but let's talk about what they're looking at. They're looking at 3 executive orders. These executive orders, from what I can tell, are really about trying to corner international criminals, sex traffickers, people involved in political corruption, and people involved in human trafficking, or people that are moving coyotes, or move human beings in and out and across borders and smuggle humans for various nefarious reasons, and they charge them and they utilize oppressive, they rape them, they do all kinds of things. They do whatever they want. It's those kind of criminals that they're after, and the main reason of these 3 executive orders were to make it legal to do asset forfeiture. Asset forfeiture is where, and they do this to drug dealers, and I think it's unconstitutional. I think they shouldn't be able to take away your assets on a suspicion. Now, once you've been convicted, then there is a reason to believe that the money that you had, you obtained through illegal purposes, or through illegal means, rather. And that, it's kind of like saying you can't keep the money just because you got out the door of the bank with it. You can't use that to defend yourself. That's the argument. And up until now, it's only been applied to the war on drugs. And now they've applied it to the war on sex traffickers and the war on political corruption. And I think the whole reason for those executive orders is to give the government some power to go after people like George Soros, who are trying to manipulate world governments and populations because they have massive wealth. And they're also involved in things like human trafficking, sex trafficking, and political corruption. So if they can catch somebody on a lower level of one of these organizations involved in sex trafficking, human trafficking of any kind, exploitation of peoples, political corruption, then they can arrest that person and forfeit all of their assets, and also claim all the assets of the organization they work for, all the way up to the top guy, hopefully George Soros. And to me, that's what those read. When I read them, that's what I see. But Mike Adams and Alex Jones are seeing something very different. They're seeing a declaration of martial law. They're, I guess, queuing off of Q, no pun intended, Q-C-U-E, off of Q, the letter Q. They're triggering off of Q and following his lead that says that this is happening, that there's going to be military tribunals, that these people are all traitors, and they should be gathered up under this large, quick net, summarily convicted without much representation, and put to death. Well, that's unconstitutional. That sounds like Nazi Germany. That sounds like Stalin's Russia. That sounds like Mao's China. That sounds like, well, it's worse than Venezuela, I think. At least they do their executions on the street, old school gangster style. They don't just swing in, pick them all up, and execute them. That's more Stalin's thing. Are y'all hearing me? This is crazy talk. This is crazy talk. I really don't believe any of it. It just can't be. I cannot believe that they would do this. And if they do, they can expect resistance. And I don't mean some little, we're part of the resistance. We're going to resist Donald Trump. Not that powerless resistance. I'm talking like they can expect some IRA kind of resistance. They can expect, because the military people aren't going to put up with this. Nobody likes being told to turn over their guns and you can't come out of the house. No one wants to see tanks in the street. To people who aren't involved in this, who can't see the bigger picture, especially, they're going to see the tanks as the problem, and the tanks as the enemy, and the tanks and the soldiers behind them as the ones that need to be dealt with. That this is a recipe for civil war. Let me tell you another thing. If the United States Constitution is ever suspended, if it's ever suspended, it will never be reinstated. You understand that if martial law is ever declared in this country, you will from then on be under a military dictatorship. That's how it goes down. That's the method of almost all coups are military takeovers. Almost all government flips start inside the military. So if they declare martial law, the president's not even the president anymore. The general in charge, the head honcho, and then they start killing each other for that position of power. This is just historical fact, yo. I ain't making stuff up here. I'm just telling you how it goes down. This is what will happen if you suspend the Constitution. There will be riots in the street. There will be open insurrections against the government, and the military will take over the government and then start killing each other off until only one man is left standing, and he'll be our new president for life. I'm putting my money on Mad Dog Mattis. I figure he's the most badass one there. He'll probably be the last man standing. I don't know. Kelly, he's kind of scary. Do you really want these generals fighting over control of our country? Come on now. We have a system. Our system works. If we have a problem within the deep state, and I believe we do, see Project Veritas, then these deep state moles need to be dug out of there through legal means. Investigations, probes, mass firings, not mass arrests. Then if we find that they also broke the law, then arrest them under the constitutional law of the United States, bring them to justice in our justice system, just like any other criminal. And we don't need to suspend the Constitution to take care of some crummy criminals. I hope wisdom prevails. I hope Q and Jones and Adams are all completely full of crud. I hope you're just so full of crap your eyes are brown. I hope this is a big lie from the pit of hell. Because otherwise, we're headed straight to war. Because nobody's going to lay down and let Donald Trump declare martial law and not do something about it. And it'll bring both sides together in a mass resistance against what could potentially be construed as a dictatorship. God preserve our republic and our Constitution. Amen.